We met them, fishermen, a tax collector, a political revolutionary, men who argued over who was greatest, who fell asleep when they should have been praying, who ran away the night everything fell apart. Ordinary men, flawed men, men you wouldn't have picked. And yet, something happened, something so undeniable, so earth-shattering, that every single one of them spent the rest of their lives telling the world about it. Not from comfort, not from safety, from prison cells, from exile, from the edges of the known world. They didn't build institutions. They didn't have armies. They didn't have money or influence or political power. They had one thing, a testimony. We saw him, he was dead, and then he wasn't, and one by one they were given a choice. Recant or die. One by one, they chose to die. This is the story of how the 12 disciples of Jesus died. Matthew's story starts at a tax booth, and it starts with a scandal. Tax collectors in first-century Judea were despised in a very specific way. They were Jews, working for Rome, collecting money from their own people for the occupying power. The system was built for corruption. They had quotas to meet, and anything squeezed out above that went straight into their own pockets. The Gospels casually lump them together with sinners. That was just the category they belonged to. Matthew was sitting at his booth in Capernaum when Jesus walked past, looked at him, said 2 words, "Follow me." Matthew got up and left. No hesitation recorded, no negotiation. He walked away from a lucrative, if despised, career and followed an itinerant rabbi from Galilee. His first act as a disciple, he threw a party, invited every tax collector and sinner he knew, bringing them all into the same room as Jesus. The Pharisees were horrified. Jesus' response became one of his most quoted lines. "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." Luke 5:31-32. Matthew's Gospel, the first book of the New Testament, was written for a Jewish audience to show how Jesus fulfilled everything they'd been waiting for. The very first words a reader encounters when they open a Bible are his. A record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham. The tax collector wrote something that outlasted every empire he ever collected money for. Tradition says Matthew was martyred in Persia or Ethiopia, possibly by sword or spear. The exact details are disputed. What isn't disputed is the legacy he left behind. Now we come to the man history handed the most unfair nickname in Scripture, Doubting Thomas. Let's talk about why that label doesn't tell the full story. Thomas appears several times in John's Gospel, and each time he has the same quality. He's honest. He says what others are probably thinking, and he's deeply, stubbornly loyal. When Jesus announced he was heading back to Judea, where people had just tried to stone him, the disciples were alarmed. It was Thomas who said, quietly, in one of the most overlooked, heroic lines in the Gospels, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." John 11:16. Not a question, not a protest, a declaration. At the Last Supper, when Thomas admitted he didn't know where Jesus was going, Jesus gave one of his most famous answers directly because of that honest question. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John 14:6. After the resurrection, Thomas wasn't in the room when Jesus first appeared. When the others told him, he wasn't convinced. He said he needed to see and touch the wounds himself. A week later, Jesus appeared again and turned directly to Thomas. We don't know if Thomas actually touched the wounds. What we know is what he said next.
My Lord and my God.
The highest declaration of who Jesus is in the entire Gospel of John. From the mouth of the so-called doubter, Thomas traveled all the way to India. The St. Thomas Christians of Kerala trace their origins directly to his mission. One of the oldest Christian communities in the world, still thriving today. Around 72 AD, near what is now Chennai, he was run through with a spear. The man who needed to touch the wounds of the risen Christ bled out into the soil of India, 2,000 miles from Galilee. James, the son of Alphaeus, is one of the most obscure figures in the New Testament. He appears in all 4 lists of the 12. Beyond that, almost nothing. He's sometimes called James the Less. Not an insult, just a way to distinguish him from the far more prominent James, son of Zebedee. What we do know, he was one of the chosen 12. He sat at the same table, heard the same teachings, walked the same roads. He was there at the Last Supper. He witnessed the resurrection appearances. He was present, faithfully, consistently, in the background of the most significant story ever told. One tradition says he was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple in Jerusalem when he refused to deny his faith. When the fall didn't kill him, he was beaten to death on the ground with a fuller's club. Another tradition places his crucifixion in Persia. A thin historical record doesn't mean an unimportant life. Most of the people who've quietly changed the world never made the front page. Jude, also called Thaddaeus, and absolutely not to be confused with Judas Iscariot, barely appears in the Gospels. But he left something behind worth noticing. His one recorded exchange with Jesus is at the Last Supper. Jesus had just promised to reveal himself to those who loved him. Jude asked a genuine, searching question. But Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world? John 14:22. It's the question of someone paying close attention. Someone who understood that something cosmic was unfolding and wanted to understand the shape of it. Jesus' answer was about love and presence and God making his home in those who follow him. A quiet moment, no drama, just a real question and an answer worth a lifetime of reflection. Jude also wrote the Epistle of Jude, 25 verses, fierce and urgent, a warning against false teachers twisting the grace of Jesus into something unrecognizable. It's the letter of a man who knew what the gospel had cost and was not going to watch it be diluted without a fight. Tradition places him in Persia alongside Simon the Zealot, where the two were arrested and martyred. He's most often depicted with an axe in classical art. Today he's the patron saint of desperate causes. There's something quietly perfect about that. The man who died preaching hope in Persia, becoming the saint people call on when all other options are gone.
We strike at the outpost near the river. The Romans will not expect it.
May Adonai grant us strength.
Simon the Zealot. Of all the 12, he might be the most politically charged, and his transformation one of the most remarkable in the whole story. Zealot isn't a casual label. Before following Jesus, Simon was part of a radical Jewish political faction that believed God required violent resistance to Roman occupation. These weren't peaceful protesters. They were willing to kill and die to drive Rome out. And here he is, walking alongside Matthew, a Roman tax collector, the living symbol of everything Simon had dedicated himself to opposing. Two men who, in any other context, would have been enemies, eating together, traveling together, sitting at the feet of the same teacher. The community Jesus built was, by the standards of his world, almost impossibly diverse. And perhaps that's the point. Jesus himself said it. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. John 13:35. Simon's individual moments with Jesus aren't recorded, but his presence is itself the statement. Whatever had driven him toward a violent revolution got redirected into a different kind of kingdom, a different kind of fight. He put down the sword and picked up something else. Tradition places him in Persia alongside Jude. He's most often depicted holding a saw, from the tradition that he was sawed in two, a form of execution documented in the ancient world. The man who once took up a sword for political liberation traveled to the edge of the known world and died there, rather than abandon what he'd found.
We bring a message of peace.
You can't tell the story of the 12 without telling its darkest chapter. Judas Iscariot. Judas was the group's treasurer. Jesus himself trusted him with the common purse. He walked with Jesus for 3 years, heard every sermon, watched every miracle, sat at every meal. And then, for 30 pieces of silver, the legal price of a common slave, he went to the chief priests and offered to hand Jesus over. The betrayal happened in the Garden of Gethsemane. The signal he'd arranged was sickening in its intimacy. He would identify Jesus with a kiss. "Rabbi," he said, and kissed him. Why? This question has driven 2,000 years of theology and literature. Was it greed? Disillusionment? An attempt to force Jesus' hand? We don't know. The Gospels don't explain it. They just record what happened next. When Judas saw Jesus had been condemned to death, something in him broke. Matthew records that he was seized with remorse, threw the 30 silver coins across the temple floor and said, "I have sinned. I have betrayed innocent blood." The chief priests shrugged, and Judas went out and hanged himself. Acts adds a grim detail. His body fell and burst open in the field bought with that blood money. It became known as Hakeldama, the field of blood. Judas wasn't a monster from birth. He was a chosen disciple who made a catastrophic choice and couldn't find his way back from it. That might be the most sobering part of his story. Not the betrayal, the despair that followed. After the ascension, Peter stood up among the gathered disciples and said someone needed to replace Judas. The criterion was clear: an eyewitness to the resurrection, someone who had been there from the very beginning. 2 men were put forward. The disciples prayed, cast lots. The lot fell to Matthias. He appears in Acts 1 and then essentially vanishes from the biblical record. The details of his ministry and death are uncertain. But Matthias said yes.
Amen.
He accepted the calling. He took his place. And in the economy of this story, That's enough. Here's the full picture, one last time. Peter, crucified upside down in Rome.
Do not
Andrew,
mourn for me,
bound to
for
an
I go
X-shaped
willingly
cross
to my
in
rest.
Greece, preaching for
Hold
2
fast to
days
the teachings
before he
I have
died.
shared.
James, son of Zebedee, beheaded by Herod. First martyr of the 12. John, exiled, survived, died of old age in Ephesus, the last one standing. Philip, crucified in modern Turkey. Bartholomew, flayed alive in Armenia. Matthew, martyred in Persia or Ethiopia. Thomas, speared to death in India. James, son of Alphaeus, thrown from the temple, beaten to death. Jude, axed or beaten in Persia. Simon the Zealot, sawed in two in Persia. Judas Iscariot, died by his own hand, replaced by Matthias. Matthias,
Amen.
martyred, manner
Is his
uncertain. 12 men who personally knew Jesus of Nazareth, who ate with him, argued with him, watched him die, and then claimed with everything they had that they had seen him alive again. Not one of them under torture, facing the sword or the cross or the axe. Not one of them said, "We made it up, we were wrong, we'll say whatever you need." People don't die for things they know are lies. The question that has haunted skeptics and believers for 2,000 years is still as sharp as ever. What did these men see that made them willing to die rather than deny it? I'm not here to answer that for you. I'm here to tell you their stories as honestly as history allows. What you do with it, that's yours to decide. If you made it to the end of this video, genuinely, thank you. This series started as a simple question. Who were these men really? Not icons, not stained glass figures, real people with real fears who made a choice that cost them everything. I hope it made you think. I hope it made you feel something. If it did, hit subscribe, because we're not done. There are more stories in this world worth telling, slowly, worth taking seriously, worth sitting with. Share this video with someone who loves history, or faith, or simply stories of people who refused to quit. Leave a comment below. Tell me which disciple hit you hardest. Tell me what surprised you. Tell me if this changed how you see any of it. And if you haven't watched part 1 yet, it's right there. Go watch it. It sets up everything you just saw. These men walked dusty roads 2,000 years ago, and somehow, they're still talking to us.